Kia ora, everyone, and welcome back to Stripped and Unscripted. I'm VIXEN Temple.
And I am Madeline.
And this is part 2 of our 2-part korero, talking about pole fit. Quite a broad topic, which will be a recurring theme throughout this podcast because that is a core kaupapa behind the show. But specifically for this episode, we want to talk about pole events, pole competitions, variety shows with pole, and our very nuanced and complicated feelings surrounding this topic. And then if we get a chance to, at the end of the episode, we will answer a little Q&A that was sent through Madeline's Anonymous. So, right, Madeline, I'll pass over to you.
Okay, so again, we have a couple of prompts to hopefully keep our brains on track. But our first one is basically just like an overview of our thoughts on pole performances. So I shall begin. My thoughts with this is that I'd kind of start off with like a bunch of different kinds of performances. So obviously we've got the really clear pole comps, we've got studio showcases, we've got variety shows like VIXEN said, we've got just anything where there is a pole dancer doing pole dance. So many different spaces in which people can perform pole. And I definitely think that there is a lot of different dynamics depending on the space in which you are performing in. Obviously, the most authentic version of that is going to be the strip club, where the strippers are stripping on the pole. That to me, and we've said this in a different episode, in the last episode, that is like genuinely the most powerful, delicious, incredible thing to witness. I remember the first time I ever went to a strip club when I was, how old was I? I was 18 or 19, and it was, my first time ever. It was my boyfriend at the time's 21st birthday, and his older brothers took us to the strip club, and I was obsessed and loved, never seen anything more magical and incredible. My boyfriend's older brother was just giving me money and money and money, and I was just throwing it at the strippers, giving them it. Here it is, take it, take it. They just kept giving me money, and I just thought it was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen, and I think that was probably subconsciously the start of my keenness to do all of that. But I think for sex workers, and not all sex workers, obviously a lot of sex workers love to see civilians and hobbyists do pole, and I am not against it in any way, but I do think that there is a lot of complex feelings for a lot of S workers, and quite often those feelings are informed by our experiences being pole performers ourselves in the strip club, and how traumatizing or triggering those performances can be, both our own in the strip club and watching civilians do it. There's a lot of arguments to talk about here. We can talk about cosplay, which is a really, really big part of this entire thing. For me personally, every single pole performance is stripper cosplay, in a sense. It might not be exactly how you would imagine someone doing pole in the pole studio or the strip club, but it is coming from the same thing. It is an emulation. Is that a word? Emulation? It is? Yeah, it is that. So, depending for me on the way and the respectfulness that is carried out, sort of decides how I feel about watching a pole performance. There are times when it is a real blatant cosplay, and that is to me really, really offensive. Again, that is so informed by my own personal experiences and opinions. There are other times when I see pole comp or pole show performances and I'm like, fuck yeah, that was incredible, that was amazing. I could see that it was a lot of real artistic choices going into it. It was a real display of incredible skill and incredible curation of like sometimes theatre, sometimes comedy, other things. But then there are ones that you watch and you can kind of tell that it is someone's kind of taken it as their opportunity to get on stage and fulfill their stripper fantasy, which feels really hard to watch because you know that they are doing pole in an environment that is so different from that of the strip club. They are able to do these sexy, sporty, whatever it be, performances with little to no risk. And that is just not the same for sex workers. And it can feel really, really hard, really, really upsetting to watch people get that privilege and not acknowledge that privilege, or not acknowledge where what they are doing comes from. I find a lot of the times in this specific context of like a performance, there is a lot of apathy. People just don't really care to credit the pioneers of the sport. And when you credit the pioneers of the sport, you're talking about strippers and sex workers, predominantly POC sex workers, who did the incredibly dangerous mahi to create this and to give you the opportunity to do it as a hobby in a safe environment. And like, things aren't perfect. The world is not perfect for sex workers. We know that. We are very far from it. But back when pole was just becoming a thing, it was just becoming like an art form, or sort of a sport, or when majority of these moves were being created, things were much worse, much worse. And so the job done by those sex workers, oh my God, they paved the way. We should be acknowledging them. And so knowing that the sport has been built off the back of that, it can be really hard to watch privileged individuals sometimes take the piss out of what has been created by those initial pioneering sex workers. And yeah, like there are certain things I don't like to put guidelines or yes and no's onto behaviors that, or styles or actions that are showcased in performances, but there is sort of like this unspoken level or like knowing about what is just genuinely upsetting and traumatizing, triggering to watch and witness as a sex worker who's experienced abuse, and not that. And I think that something that it would be really great for us as a whole, the community, to understand is what it is that makes it really offensive, and that we also learn how to have empathy and understanding for the S workers who are really upset by witnessing this stuff. Because it's inherently triggering. I would kind of compare it to like, imagine making someone who has gone through some sort of physical assault almost relive that and have their struggle be mocked. It can very much feel that way sometimes. And maybe it may not be malicious intent. It might not be meant to feel that way, but it very much can when you see someone on stage doing a comedy version of a strip club performance. That can be really hard when you know that person is doing nothing to support S workers who are still incredibly, harmed and have a lot of struggle in the industry. But then again, like there are so many ways you can do it really well, and there are so many ways that you can ally outside of that performance, which lend you like more credibility, I guess. Maybe credibility is not the right word, but if you ally with us, if you acknowledge us, if you respect us, if you support us, sometimes doing some of those things in a performance, the harm can be more mitigated. It's not eliminated. Allyship is never going to eliminate all harm from S workers, but it can make things better, because the more people that support us, the better obviously things are going to be for us. And so I'm not, and any sense against comps, performances, civs performing pole dance. I just wish that civs would have more understanding for why it is traumatizing and triggering for S workers to witness it, and that they would maybe become a little more self-aware and reflective on their decisions whilst creating pieces. And just think about, why am I doing this specific thing in the routine? Is it because it adds to my story, or is it a skill that I'm trying to show off, or am I just having my 5 minutes of stripper time in front of an audience? And there's nothing wrong with getting on stage and being erotic and sexy and gorgeous and leaning into that like really feminine, raw, like yummy vibe. But there are just some things that you see and you know that is directly coming from the strip club. And if you refuse to acknowledge that and you refuse to do anything to help those people, it's hard to witness. It's hard to witness. But I'll pass on to you, VIXEN.
I loved everything you said. And I actually have some questions I want to ask you. But first, I'll give my thoughts on this. But I have some questions to ask you, so don't let me forget that. So, okay. Okay. I have complicated thoughts around it. And I touched on this in the last episode about, I am, as Madeline is too, but I am someone that has experienced being assaulted in the club whilst collecting tips. The justice system failed me. My job was used as a means of defending his actions. So that does maneuver and influence how I feel about these situations. So because I am a performer and I'm very involved in the cabaret world, I want to talk more about like the cabaret side of it all. It can be quite interesting to watch civilians be celebrated for something that has resulted in me being traumatized and ostracized. And as I said in the last episode, sometimes I gaslight myself out of having those feelings, and I'm like, don't be silly, like, it's not about you, stop being so self-involved and egotistical, it's not about you. But I am a stripper who has been impacted negatively by stigma, and as you said, I think you can tell the difference between someone who has put a lot of thought and intention behind their act in a way that is not mocking stripping versus the people who are having their little 10-minute, oh my God, I'm a stripper moment, and then they get to go off and take their shoes off, and that's over. For me, I'm always bothered by people who make it rain in their act. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, and if you have never danced for tips, don't fucking make it rain in any of your acts. It's not relevant. You don't know what the fuck that's like. So that's just my opinion. You're entitled to disagree, but that's what I think. If you've never known the danger of dancing for drunk men for tips, I don't think you should be making it rain in your performances. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I know that I'm even getting like anxious saying them because it's just, I feel very vulnerable. But yeah, I want to pass a question off to you, Madeline. You touched on this about I think you said like you're not trying to police people. So something I see that you get asked a lot on your Instagram when you do Q&As is people accusing you of policing women's bodies when it comes to like what you're saying, we can't wear lingerie, and like you're saying like it's wrong for us to strip. Like, aren't you policing our bodies? I'd just love to know your thoughts on that a bit more, if you'd be okay to talk about that, because that is a question you get asked a lot, and I'd just like to hear your thoughts on that.
It is so crazy that you just said that, because while you were talking, I wrote that down. No. So yeah. So I deal with this a lot. I have a lot of thoughts. Some are a little bit more straightforward and potentially a little bit more ruthless than others. My first thing, and yeah, it's going to be a little more like potentially confronting if this is something that you think, if you are listening to stuff that we say or I say and you're thinking Maddie is trying to tell me what I can and can't do with my body. And I just ask that you remember that this conversation that we're having right now is about supporting and honouring and respecting sex workers. And it would be really great if you could stop centering yourself. And that is a sort of a mic drop moment, in the sense of the conversation isn't about you. And I understand that that is very hard to sit with. And I know that that's going to bring up a lot of resistance in people. But if we're trying to tell you that this thing that you are doing is upsetting, offensive, or disrespectful, we're doing this to support the marginalized community that is sex workers. My other thoughts are that this is never to police women. This is never to tell you what you can and cannot do with your body. I know that there are people in this community that say that about me and say that that is the whole point of my workshop, and it is not. My workshop actually starts with and has always from the get-go started with a disclaimer that says, before I start on this information, I want everyone to know that this is not a personal attack. This is not me telling you what you can and can't do. This is us providing you with information that is going to help you best respect and honor and support and uplift the people who created what you do as a hobby. And so it is really, really frustrating when you're met with that, because I've never been one to tell women that they can't get naked or they can't do this thing. That is never the result that I'm after. What I'm trying to impress upon people is that we need to be more mindful and reflective of our actions in the way that it impacts this marginalized community. And that goes for your actions and behaviors in any space that would impact any marginalized community.
No, I agree with everything you're saying. And just going back to the policing women's bodies and being accused of that, can we just consider for a moment how much strippers' bodies are policed and sex workers' bodies are policed? And so when you want to center yourself by accusing Madeline of policing women's bodies, please consider how much ours are policed. And you're accusing Madeline of policing women's bodies, I think, is just quite ignorant, because in my perspective, that is not what Madeline is doing. And as you said, you preface the start of your workshops, and it's something that you and I talk about a lot. That's why I wanted to bring it up on the podcast, because when I ask myself this a lot too, am I policing women's bodies by saying that I feel weird about seeing civilian women, if they strip in their performances, and I suddenly start having some feelings around it, and I'm like, is this weird of me to essentially say that unless you've worked in a strip club for mostly drunk men, you shouldn't be doing that or whatever? It's something that I have back and forth views on, and I'm not entirely set on one thing, because it is not a black or white situation. It's very nuanced. And like I said, I'm like, is it weird of me to think like this? And I sit with that a lot. Me and Madeline discuss that a lot. At what point are we just policing people's bodies, especially women's bodies? But I think I love what you said about it's just being really considerate what the intention behind you taking your clothes off in the act is. Does it add to your story? Is it you wanting to have your little stripper cosplay moment? Yeah, it is weird, because I don't want to sit here and say that unless you have worked in a strip club, you can never strip, because it is something that it pops up in a lot of variety shows. It pops up in drag, it pops up in burlesque, it pops up in pole fit, it pops up in comedy. Stripping is not, taking your clothes off is not inherently something that only cis women who have worked in the strip club can do. But when it comes specifically to pole fitness, the stripping side of it does come from the strip club. And it's just, this is a really complicated conversation, right? I want to pass that back to you, because I just wanted to add that point on you're policing women's bodies. Well, our bodies are policed a lot. So yeah, but I don't know. This is a really complicated talk. Do you have any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I will say that when I have received comments like that in the past, or when I have had people be critical of me in that way in the past, sometimes it can definitely feel like a little bit of a way to cop out of the conversation. It can definitely feel like a little bit of a way to turn it back and victimize themselves and like put it on you and discredit your argument. It's like, yeah, like a very covert way to like shift blame, which is frustrating because, like you said, Vixen, can we consider for a moment the way that sex workers' bodies have been policed and disrespected and abused? Like, there's no part of me that wants to tell you that you can't free the nip. It isn't about that. It's not about that kind of idea. It's just that you need to check in with yourself about why you're doing it, and are you doing it in a way that's disrespectful? Are you doing it in a way that is harmful? And unfortunately, when you add a pole to that stripping, you create an image that is literally just that of a stripper in a strip club. And so you have to be thoughtful about that context and kind of what you're doing. And I know it's so liberating and beautiful to experience like stripping and sensuality in that way, but it's just very it's very privileged, and it's very kind of tunnel vision to just care about your own liberation or your own moment of, I don't know, what are you going to call it, funsies, like expression. I just think that in this topic we're talking about a group of people and what is best for them, and this specific group of people is in a lot of danger all the time. And so those of us who are more privileged, who are partaking in this as a guest in this house, just need to sit back and be like, oh, okay, I understand why you guys are offended by this. I'm going to think and look into ways of how can I still partake in this whilst making it as little traumatic and triggering as possible, and supporting and acknowledging. But yeah, like I received that, like she's just telling people what they can and can't do about their bodies. We're just asking you to do it in a way that acknowledges and respects us and uplifts us and tries to help drag us out of this shitstorm that the world has put us in, because we created the thing. So just give us a helping hand. That's what we're asking for here. Yeah, you go, Vixen.
I agree, because, and I think the reason that I have resistance anytime I talk about this conversation is here in Aotearoa, because sex work has been decriminalized, and I think a lot of people, and you touched on this in the episode about tone policing, about how pole-fit civilians are so, they're around strippers enough that they sort of accept us in whatever way that might look like. They do forget how much the wider society treats us. And I think it's really important to note that we never know whether it's going to be safe to do this. And here in Aotearoa, if you're informed about fired up stilettos, you know the reality of what it is like to be a stripper in Aotearoa. It is not ideal. Your money is constantly being stolen. You're being abused by the people that are there to keep you safe. And so I think it's really easy for people to forget that, and to forget, where a lot of this quote unquote triggering thoughts might come from for the strippers that do. You're at a variety show and you're seeing this person who you know is not a stripper do this act that feels, like it could have happened in a strip club, and just touching on that. So it's really interesting, right? Where I think about, like I said earlier, is it weird that I'm saying that if you've never worked in a strip club, you shouldn't be doing that? Because that's not what I'm saying. But is it weird that sometimes my mind does go there? And something I find quite interesting is that when I have done a pole show outside of the strip club, for example, when I did kick up a fuss. My favorite kick up a fuss was the one we did at Valhalla, because we had a really queer audience and we had trans strippers, and it was what I want the strip club to be one day. I don't think the strip club should always just be a gentleman's club where it's like cis women dancing for, you know, quote unquote heterosexual men. I love the thought of the strip club being this queer utopia, like Skin Suit and Tamaki Makoto that you and I both danced at, that the fucking incredible Miles produced. Those events have women and trans and queer and so many different bodies and non-binary and so many different people dancing, and the audience is queer, and those are healing for me. And the Kick Up a Fuss I danced at, that was I produced, sorry, they had a specifically queer audience. How beautiful it was to hear from trans people, how cool it was to see themselves as a stripper and seeing that body being worshipped, because that's really what stripping is. You're worshipping the quote unquote feminine form. And so for me, when I wonder, like, am I just being quite patriarchal and like policing bodies by saying, unless you've performed for the quote unquote male gaze of the strip club, you shouldn't be doing that on stage? I just think about how much it means to me, and I know every other stripper that has performed outside of the strip club says the same things. When you perform in a space that it's to an audience that doesn't feel entitled to your body, in a cabaret show where the MC has made a note of like, don't fucking touch the performers without their consent, it is so healing, and it's something that I just wish strippers had more of an opportunity for, and that's why I started Kick Up a Fuss and did the Halloween variety shows at the club, at Fringe Bar. I wanted to give a place for strippers to perform to especially queer audiences, and the cabaret audience has way more of an understanding around consent, because they're not drunk, gross men who are, I said this in my show, Just the Tip, A Stripper's Guide to Strip Club Etiquette. The strip club is a place that men feel that their actions have no consequences because of the way they view strippers, and they think it is their club, it is the gentleman's club. There are men that seek us out to assault us. They are there to subject us to harm because it is how they feel about all women, and they see strippers and sex workers as the easy ones that society won't care about to put their feelings onto. A friend of mine who's a beautiful trans woman has said to me that the way men treat trans women is how they feel about all women. And I also think the same thing can be said about the way that men treat sex workers is how they feel about all women. And so it's quite healing when you get to be in an environment where the audience does respect the art behind what you're doing, as well as the sensuality and everything. And I want that for people who, for example, like I said, most strip clubs, they will only hire you if you present as a cis woman. So for me, it's like, it can be really beautiful when I get to see a trans person or a intersex person or someone who would not usually get hired in a normal strip club get to have that moment where maybe they are having their little moment of being a stripper because they want to be, but they're not allowed to be because the club won't hire them. But a lot of the times it's mostly felt disrespectful from women who are cis, who probably could work, if they walked into a strip club, they would get hired, but they think that they're above that, or it's just not for them. Yeah, because I have a lot of friends that do pole fit that are trans, or they are non-binary mask or whatever, and they would not get hired in the strip club. So for them to have their little stripper moment, like, cool, I guess, but it's just, it's a weird feeling, right? It is a weird feeling because it's not a simple black or white solution, but I've sort of rambled there. I hope that made sense. It's just something that I think, as someone that has experienced dancing in a strip club for drunk men versus in a variety show, and how healing that can be and how cool that can be. It's something that I want for more strippers, and that's why I think that they should get the opportunity first and then imitate a second. So yeah, that was that little tangent I had about that. Did that make sense?
Yeah, no, it did. And I also think that for me, one of the biggest parts of it, and you briefly touched on this, but all of what you said is like, yeah, 100% agree. I find a specific little area of this that really bothers me is when civilians or hobbyists will take their opportunity to be a stripper for XYZ minutes. And that, again, is not me saying that that is what everyone doing a performance is. It's just specific people that do that. When they take that opportunity to perform like that and they just refuse to acknowledge at all and they're silent, they just will post up their comp routine, or they will, win this thing and do all the stuff, and there's just no mention of strippers. There's just no mention of where it comes from. It's just this, they've just, I guess in a sense, like taken the exact thing out of the strip club and dropped it into the sanitized environment and just not credited the people who created it at all. And that just like screams of apathy to me. Like, you are indifferent to the struggles of the people who made this possible. And that bothers me a lot. That really bothers me. But I agree, like, Skinsuit was incredible. One of my favorite performances that I've done. The easiest night of stripping of my life, because we were just respected and loved upon and centered. And I would really love to see more S workers get that opportunity, especially the ones who are really keen to perform, those who really want to make a performing arts career out of their skill dancing. Those are the kind, and there's so many of them as well, and they're out here and they're not begging for the opportunity, but they are keen. And so we need to actually just put a little bit more effort into like finding those people and amplifying them and giving them the opportunity, because there's a lot of stereotypes around like strippers on a pole and how you also kind of touched on this a little bit in the first ep when you were talking about how when you were doing tricks in the studio, the instructors were like, oh, like not quite. But there's a lot of like kind of stigma around strippers like being unsafe pole dancers or incorrect pole dancers and all of this sort of stuff. And while strippers may do it differently, strippers do it professionally, and they do it all the fucking time. And so there's this level of like ease and professionalism that comes to strippers dancing because we just do such a huge volume of it that lends itself so wonderfully for a performance career. Like, and I it's kind of silly that I have to explain this, but like, we are the pros. We are literally the pros. It's not just that we have been paid to do it once or twice.
We are the blueprint. And this could probably take us into our conversation about pole fit competitions. So for me, as you said, a lot of my pole is not technically right. It's not me, this move, that move, and, invert into a Cupid's arrow, into a fucking, I can't even remember half the names of the fucking moves anymore. I am performing from a place of fluidity. I might pull out a trick every now and then because I'm like, oh, this is impressive. But most of the time, I am seducing the pole because it is a phallic image, and that is the point of it being a pole. Look at this. Look at me dancing on imagine if this was your penis. Like, it's the reason why I don't always put my hands up to do a pole show, because I think people are looking more for those big, fancy, impressive, more circus moves, which are really cool. I'm not shitting on them at all. I have seen civilians do pole fit where I'm like, fuck. Like, I judged a competition, and the person that won the competition I judged was a civilian, and some of the best fucking pole fit performances I've ever seen. It was, gorgeous. So I'm not sitting here shitting on people for doing that. I'll be honest, I envy you. Like, you're incredible. You can do these amazing tricks. I applaud you. I look up to you. I think it's incredible. I literally look up to you because you're up there doing a trick. But for me, that's not the style of pole I do. And I think that that's what has become more accepted and more bookable when you do a cabaret variety show. And that's why I have noticed recently in Punaki there's been more of an uptake of strippers doing pole and variety show, and it's been really cool to see because I'm now seeing myself represented more, which makes me more confident to want to do the acts that I know I could bring. And that will take us off to our second conversation about pole fit competitions, because, okay, so as I touched on, like...
Sorry. the way you had to pause there.
Okay, so I talked about this in the last episode about when I was quite deep in the pole fit world and I was training 4 times a week and I was really, oh my God, I was so ripped. Oh my God, my partner at the time called me his little Wolverine because like Wolverine in the comics is canonically like really short and buff and I'm like, I was really short, petite, but really ripped. And I felt so good and confident. I was so fucking strong. Oh my God, I remember once I was trying to hustle a lap dance out of him and he turns to me and he goes, listen, I mean this with all due respect. I would love to take you for a lap dance. You're very beautiful, but your abs make me feel inadequate as a male. And I was like,
As he should.
I said, you know what? Fair enough. You can go book someone who doesn't intimidate or emasculate you. I thought that was what a nice backhanded compliment. But anyways, so yeah, pole fit competition. So as I mentioned, I was really keen to get into them. I remember even when I was in like uti puti starting to train, my goal was I'm going to compete, and my Leo arrogance took over. Oh my God, I'm going to win all these competitions and I'm going to tour the country and I'm going to be the best. And I'm not actually a very competitive person by like at all. It's something I wish I was slightly more competitive. But I'm not. I mostly compete because it's another excuse for me to perform. And I'm a show off. Don't get me wrong, but I don't need to be like the best. And my worth is not measured by winning awards. But I did want to compete because for me it was another way to show off. And I was like, oh my God, this would be so cool. And pole fit competitions are huge in Aotearoa and they look like a fun community event. But what put me off them, not just because I've left the industry and I haven't trained in years, and I've left the sex work industry and I've left the stripping industry and I haven't been on a pole in years properly, is because I didn't go to my first pole comp that I actually went to was the one I judged. And I remember watching it and being like, oh yeah, no, I'm never competing in a pole fit competition because the criteria of judging isn't actually about what I perform as. It's about getting the moves technically right. And, you know, I think I would get like scored quite highly on audience, stage present and like audience interaction. But when it comes to getting the moves, like I don't flow from an invert to another move and then another move. I don't do those things, if that makes sense. I'm forgetting like the names of all the words. So I felt that pole competitions, I'm going to pass back to you, but my last thoughts on that, it is a little strange to judge people. I feel this way about competitions in general when it comes to the arts. I think it's a weird, like, how do you judge art, you know?
I couldn't agree more. Like, I think for me, I've had to explain this to people so many times because I receive so much pressure from people to compete, and it's just not something that's in my like capacity, like mentally. But for me, because my dancing is so emotional and vulnerable for me, to have it judged is just something that I'm not interested in. And it's not about pushing myself outside of my comfort zone. It's about the fact that what I do in my dancing is a process of my own trauma. And it is created from the experiences in the strip club alongside all of the things that happened to me while I was sort of creating my style. And I don't feel a desire to put that on a platter for someone to judge. I also do feel a little bit interesting about judging women based off who is the sexiest. I think that like there's a way to judge creativity around that sort of stuff, and like you said, all of those elements like stage presence and musicality and, you know, all of that. But like, yeah, to judge women on sexual or sensual, should I say, expression, I feel like it's a delicate balance there, and I'm not sure if it's necessarily always respected. And I think that my own experiences with pole comps in Aotearoa is in New Zealand we have, and I think this goes for a lot overseas as well, but in New Zealand we have a really big focus on theatre and storytelling and themes and costumes, and I love that shit. I love seeing it. Like I said in the earlier episode, one of my best mates is a theatre freak, like little freaky theatre baby. And so her routines are like, they might as well be a theatre show, like very theatrical, drama kid energy. And I love to see it. I love to see it. That doesn't fit my personal style. The story that I am telling you is emotional stripper, horny stripper. That's my story. And that is not perceived to be a good enough storyline or a worthy, like, theatrical piece. And that in itself, to me, is a little bit problematic. The way that, and I think this goes for, like, some sexy style competitions as well. There's still, like, quite a big focus on a storyline. And again, I've nothing against that. I love to see beautifully crafted performances that tell a story, but that just isn't necessarily what I do. My story that I tell is my story of how I created my sensuality and my style, I guess. And so it is, it's an interesting concept to me. I also find that, like, there's just not many sex workers involved in NZ pole comps. And before you all jump into my DMs to tell me that there are, I know that there are, but they're not in the majority. And so I definitely feel a little bit of a, like, sense of, again, I mean, we experience this in this whole experience of being an S worker, but you feel in the minority. And I don't know if being backstage at a pole comp as a competitor would be something that would be smart for me and my own mental health. I feel a very different vibe performing for pole fitness people than I do for queer or strip club customers. And I just feel that it would definitely, there would be a lot of pressure, and I think it would suck a lot of joy from my own creation of my movement. Yeah, what were you going to say, Vixen?
No, I just wanted to agree with that.
Like, it's just not, I just don't think that's an environment that would, like, speak to me, or, like, I wouldn't necessarily enjoy that. And again, that's like you said, it's not a negative or a positive, it's an observation of who we are and our trauma. And I think it's actually quite a lot of self-awareness to know that that's probably not great for us. It's probably not something that we want to subject ourselves to. But for other people, they thrive in that environment, and that is awesome. But that's just not us.
Absolutely. Like, even just competitions in general. So I have competed in burlesque and drag competitions, and I've sort of realized I just don't think this is for me because, as I touched on, like, and I have nothing against people that do compete, and I mean, I have judged competitions. I do hope one day to enter Burlesque Noir, which is a Nocturne Sanctum alternative burlesque thing. So I do hope to compete one day, and I'm not against them. But for me, and I'm going to tell on myself a little bit here on how, like, maybe arrogant I can be sometimes, when I've competed in competitions and when I've received judge feedback from the judges, like, I'm so appreciative, but, like, I don't want to hear it. Like, and that's because I think it's my Virgo moon. I think it's also because a lot of my performance art pieces, especially drag, I'm telling the story of my trauma. Maybe that's a toxic trait of mine. Maybe that's something I should fix, but I am quite stubborn with my art, where if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. That's cool. It's not for everyone. You don't have to love it. You don't have to hate it. If you love it, wicked. You probably relate to it. A lot of the people that enjoy my art are usually queer people or other women or other sex workers or other disabled people who can relate to the story I'm putting down, or mostly alternative people especially. And so when I get feedback from judges, I'm like, oh, thanks, but I'm not gonna fucking listen because and
You're like you've curated something purposefully, and sometimes maybe a judge isn't seeing what you've created through the lens that you've created it through.
absolutely.
And what you perceive to be like a appropriate stylistic choice may not be that to someone else. And again, just another like proof that we're maybe just not the right people for these spaces. Like
Because even on the other side, like when I judged burlesque noir, I loved doing that. It was so much fun, and it was actually quite a unique experience being the judge and seeing the criteria and being on the other side of like, oh right, so this is what the judges are looking for. I have to say, having been a judge and being in competitions and watched competitions, I don't always think the quote unquote, I don't want to use the word best, but the most, I don't know, a need for a better word. I don't always think the best person wins. I think it's just the person that ticked all the marks on the judging criteria. And when I was writing up my feedback to the performers, I felt really bad. I was like, who fucking cares what I think? Like, this is your art. Like, like here's maybe some I looked at it more through like a theatrical theater degree lens of like maybe play up this costume bit a bit or this or whatever, I don't know. But like, I just felt really odd because I'm like, who the fuck cares what I think at the end of the day? It's your art, it's your story, and I feel lucky enough to just be able to witness it. And so when it comes to pole fit competitions specifically, a friend of mine once made a point where they were like, it's weird to make people compete in something that like, they worded it in a way that I didn't quite agree with, but I understood what they were saying. They pretty much said like, when you're in the strip club, you're competing with other strippers to make money, and now suddenly you're competing with other people to be the best. Like, I wouldn't say that us strippers are competing with one another, but I did understand what they meant. Like, we are all trying to make money, and we are all there to hustle and book, and some of us work together, some of us are very individual, some of us, maybe some do see others as competition. I don't think most strippers do look at other strippers as like, you're my competition, but we are all in the club trying to make the most money as possible with the limited customers we may have. And so we're all out there on the floor, hyper vigilant and all of that, and we're selling our essence. Whereas when you're competing, yeah, you're trying to be quote unquote the best. You're trying to get all the technical moves down and impress the judges who, look, I just want to say it. I'm just going to say it as I think I've made it very clear. I don't fucking want to be judged by civilians. I don't actually give a fuck what you think about what I look like on the pole, because what the fuck would you know? I'm sorry. I said it.
And honestly, fucking fair enough. Fucking fair enough. Like, again, like, and I'm getting a little bit sick of the disclaimers that we're having to do, but the variety of opinions is real. Some people don't give a fuck. Some people give a fuck. And you're valid to have that, like, you built your style and what you do in the club, and it is informed by existing in the club. And so to have someone who has never been in the club judge you, your dislike for that is understandable. Like, other people don't have to agree with you there, but can you not understand how that would make sense? Like, if you don't like that, that makes perfect sense why you wouldn't like that. It doesn't mean that you're necessarily like, everyone else is wrong for wanting to be judged by civilians if you're an S worker. That's not what she's trying to say. It's, it makes perfect sense why you wouldn't like that. And like, to a degree, like, I feel the same. Like, not to like toot my own horn, but like, technically I do everything pretty much technically like perfect. And again, the tall poppy in me right now is screaming, so I'm having a hard time to like talk about my skill level, but I would score high in like technical ability. And so that to me, I guess it's like a little bit of a different lens. I just find that like it doesn't feel like a space that I want to be a part of. And I do, there is part of me that does, feel a twinge of like hurt, or maybe more than a twinge, just, knowing how celebrated everyone is going to be at an event like that, and imagine myself going to work that evening and, being in that completely different environment. Yeah. But like, I've judged my own comp, which kind of doesn't count, but like, I agree. For me, it's like the best performance is not the most technical performance. I think that like, there's a lot of elements that go into it, but the best performance to me is one that has been like really well curated, that has a good level of execution, draws the audience in, and speaks to that person and their experience of pole. And for civilians and hobbyists, their experience of pole is not the strip club. So to see the money being thrown and the tip me shoes and sort of stuff, it's frustrating. And like, again, I always try to preface with like, I don't want to tell people what they should and shouldn't do, but like, I couldn't agree more with you about the tipping thing, like the making it rain thing. I'm like, what are we doing? Like, it's firstly just a really lazy stylistic choice, and it's just, yeah, it's a piss take, it's a parody. And there are other movements that are really similar that are just a parody, bending over, holding the pole and slamming the pole in between your ass cheeks. If you're going to partake in behavior like that, I would really fucking hope that you are supporting the girlies, the strippers, and the folk in the strip club. Like, to just blatantly take from that culture or that community and say nothing about it is just downright frustrating. And I think that, and to take this a few steps further, like to slightly change the lens of the conversation that we're having, I think the judging panels should be strippers. I'm sorry, again, you can disagree with me. There are so many strippers in this country who would be incredible for that. So many, especially when it's a sexy style comp. They should all be strippers. And to build on that, I think that sexy style pole comps should be run by strippers, not civilians. Again, you can disagree with me there. I think that. And I think we've been filming for what, 3 hours now? So we're starting to become a little bit like less filtered with like how we feel, but I just feel as though it's a completely different experience learning how to dance in a strip club versus learning how to dance in a pole studio. And if we're doing sexy style, we should be judged by strippers. And yeah, I think that pole is inherently political, but so is having a female body or a trans body or a POC body is an inherently political thing. And so we need to stop treating some of these events like just a funsies little cute thing that we do. We need to start thinking about it in this more like this bigger scope, because when we do, it makes these events way less harmful. It makes these events way more productive. And because pole comps in New Zealand are such a big deal, we don't have many of them. I think we probably have less than 10, or maybe, yeah, probably less than 10, maybe around 10. Because they're so big and they're so popular and they're so widely known within the community, these are such awesome opportunities for us to highlight strippers and sex workers and to get the message out and across. And so people that are running these things, like, it really is your job to do your research and just work that little bit harder to find the right people for the job who are local in this country, deserving of these opportunities, have endless experience. And yeah, just they are such awesome opportunities. And so I just wish like we would utilize them a little better as people in the pole universe, I guess. But like, do you have anything to add to that, Vixen, or do you have anything like that, any like thing that sparked in your brain when I was saying all of that?
Yeah, I do. I want to say I'm really glad that you mentioned like
us becoming more unfiltered, because I want to touch on that. So it's something I've struggled with a lot over the years as an advocate, that people think that me saying an opinion means that I think everyone has to fucking agree with it, and if they don't, like, they're wrong. Like, I am autistic, which means I don't think of things very black or white. I can see the spectrum of nuance, and me expressing an opinion doesn't mean that I say anyone who disagrees with this needs to fucking be cancelled. Like, I'm so tired of people putting that narrative in my fucking mouth. So I want to try to stop apologizing for, this is just what I think, because it is what I think. Like, I personally don't want to fucking be judged by a civilian on my pole dancing. I am very proud of the style of movement and the way that my performance is shaped by my lived experiences, as everyone's is. I call myself a performance artist for that reason. Like, I am an artist, and I use performance to tell those stories. And in the clubs, I still felt like a performance artist in the way that I'm performing hyper-femininity, and it was drag in so many ways. Like, my drag career started as a stripper. And so, yeah, I'm really glad you touched on that. I think as the episodes go on, we are going to get a lot more unfiltered and maybe more vulgar. But I think because it's early days, we're sort of wanting to test the waters. And I think you and I, as confident as we are in our opinions, we have experienced a lot of hate and backlash over the years. And as we touched on in the other episode, tone policing and being accused of being bullies and all that I think, as much as I am a really unapologetic person, I do sometimes, my inner child takes over and is like, oh no, like, I don't want to say these things. I don't want to risk people, thinking that I'm this or that. But it's like, these are my opinions. It's our fucking podcast. And we're here to say what we think. The second you wrap your hand around a pole and you put on pleaser heels, you are now getting to benefit off this world that we don't get that benefit that much. So the second you enter a pole fit space, whether you make money off it or not, but especially if you make money off it as a civilian, that camaraderie is a fucking condition, I would say. And if that makes you feel a particular way, ask yourself, why are you doing pole fit? Why not Lyra? Why not Zumba or fucking whatever? Why not ropes or hoops or whatever? Why pole fit? It's because deep down, you do admire and love the way that strippers move. And if you can't advocate for us in that, if you can't turn that love and admiration into a cause that you care about, it is appropriation. The same way that any cultural appropriation, there's a difference between appropriation and celebration. And it's appropriation when you are not willing to listen to be in community with, to platform, to prioritize the experiences and the realities of the people. You are not experiencing this environment the same way that strippers do. And people get so defensive around being told and having their privileges brought to light. But as we said in the tone policing episode, it's actually your responsibility to just sit with that and ask, like, why am I having resistance around this? You having privileges in other areas doesn't take away from the disadvantages you have in other aspects of your life. But when you come into a pole fit studio, you owe that fucking camaraderie to us. We don't owe you fucking shit.
I firstly just want to say, love that you just let loose. Like, I think that's really what the people want from us. And I think that for anyone out here who's listening to this, who's currently feeling quite confronted or quite, like, resistant to what was just said, or anything for that matter that we say that feels a little bit, like, yucky in your heart or in your mind or wherever, that I just would love for you to just sit down for a second and just think about what you know and what majority of people know to be the experience of a sex worker, and that is a very dangerous experience. It can be a very traumatic experience. It is isolating. It is ostracizing. It's not all bad. There are so many incredible parts of it. I fucking love being a stripper. It is the best job I've ever had. But I want you to just have a little think about how difficult that existence can be, and just try to understand why sex workers in these spaces have these opinions, and just have some empathy for why that is, and try not to discount everything because it feels confronting to you. It is never a personal attack. It isn't us reaching down the phone screen to you personally and telling you that you are horrible. It is just genuinely an opinion. And like we've said several times, there are so many different opinions. So many sex workers don't give a shit. Other sex workers think that pole fit shouldn't exist, and there is a spectrum in between. And it's just about sitting back and thinking, why does, like Vixen just said, sit back and think, like, why does that cause resistance in my heart? And just try to receive that feedback in a way that actually honors the marginalized community that it is coming from, instead of turning around and going, well, I've been attacked, and well, you're trying to tell me what to do. And it isn't a tit for tat, because unfortunately the playing field isn't even. We don't have the privileges that you have in this space. So in the context of a pole dancing studio, strippers are underprivileged in comparison to pole fitness hobbyists. And so just sit with that. It doesn't mean that we're telling you that your life has been incredible and easy and you've got it better than us. Just try to receive that feedback, and instead of brushing it off and being like, well, no, you're this, just try to understand why it is that so many of us do feel this way and are triggered and upset by some of this behavior. And yeah, we have had to do quite a bit of tone policing in order to do the last few episodes. And this is us just like providing information for you. Like, this is a perspective that maybe you haven't heard, maybe you have heard it, but it's important to hear it. And Vixen's right. Like, there is a level of camaraderie that is expected, and you're kind of obligated to give us. And I know if you sit there and you know that maybe you haven't given that camaraderie, it's going to feel icky, and there's a level of guilt and shame that may come with that. But try to just release that shame and guilt and just change the way that you advocate for us, and just give us a little bit more of your support. Like, that's the whole point for this, is that we're providing you with more information so that you can understand how and why it is so important to advocate alongside us. It is not a personal attack. It's not us trying to shit on you. It's people who are marginalized just getting really frustrated about how little this is talked about, essentially. But yeah.
No, I love that. I think it's never too late to be a comrade and to, just look into ways that you can do better. The topic around these last two episodes are definitely going to come up in future episodes, and this has just been a good way to sort of introduce that kōrero and to start that dialogue and be really curious to hear what others think, especially other strippers and sex workers. But now I'm going to pass off to Madeline, and we're going to do a little Q&A, and then we're going to sign off and see you in the next episode.
Okay, so we have two questions. We'll see if we get through them. The first one is simple, but I think we'll both have a bit of a funny haha and some interesting things to say here. But I'm going to combine these questions because it was two questions, but they were basically, have you ever been horny in a lap dance, and have you ever fallen in love with a customer? And I find those to be quite interesting, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there going, ooh, why would you, no, yucky, disgusting. And actually, we both have experiences from that. So, Vixen, if you would like to touch on whether you've done those things or if you support doing those things, go for
it. I have. There are 3 instances in my mind that I can think of where I have been horny in a lap dance. That's how, like, rare they've been. But they have happened because, as Madeline said, like, our clients aren't always like, you know, you think, ew, gross, what the fuck. Sometimes our clients can be good looking. Like, I am in stripper work mode, but I'm still a human being and I am attracted to people. And there has been, 3 instances in my head where I have been horny in a lap dance, and it wasn't like, I don't know, it's just, listen, a lap dance is a very intimate, erotic experience. And when you are giving it to someone that you find attractive, I actually prefer giving them to people that I don't find attractive. It is so much easier for me to just like pretend to be so attracted to this person, because when I am actually attracted to them, I'm like, oh my God, I can't be in stripper mode right now. Like, I can't be in work mode. I genuinely want to fuck this person. But yes, I have been horny in a lap dance before, and it was because I found the client to be physically attractive, and you know, we've been talking for a few hours, and I am demisexual, so I gain a lot of sexual chemistry and attraction towards people that I feel like I need for a better word, spiritual and emotional connection to. So, you know, when I spent the night talking to a customer and like I'm actually genuinely enjoying the yarn, and then by the time we get into the lap dance, like, yeah, man, I might be like, fuck, this is kind of hot. Damn. But it's happened, 3 times. And, yeah, I'll let you answer the horny one, and then I'll answer the one about falling in love with a customer, because I absolutely have.
Okay, yeah, of course I've been fucking horny in a lap dance. Like, oh my God. There is such a wide variety of customers at the strip club. And I have like, can I answer kind of both at the same time? Sure.
Please, please.
I'm going a little bit like gossipy girly pop vibes right now, but like, I have done lap dances for men and gone, oh my God, you're so hot, yummy, 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 and then ended up dating them. Not boyfriend girlfriend dating, but like it was one of those things where, and strippers will understand this experience, or potentially other sex workers as well, but when you kind of like look across the room and like one of your friends who's a stripper is like talking with a customer, and you're like, oh man down, like they've fallen in love, and like the customer and the stripper are just like getting along really well, and that has fucking been me. And so I've ended up going on like dates with them because they're like, go on a date with me, and I'm like, yes, King, I'll go on a date with you. So fucking A, like, yeah, unfortunately, the first club that I ever danced at, that I was at for ages, has mirrors in the lap dance booths, and so you can see everything that's going on, which can be quite like a horny erotic experience. And yeah, like they're not horrible and ugly. Like some of the best looking men that I've dated, I met at the strip club. And even though they were potentially evil to me down the track, and I probably didn't actually fall in love with any of them, I definitely have like explored romantic connections with men from the club. Not to say that I recommend it, because I don't. I don't think that all the men that come into the club are lovely men. I think some of them are just dragged in there by their friends and they're nice and whatever. And then there's others who are in there for more like evil reasons, and we want to stay the fuck away from them. So I would never recommend that you date customers from the strip club. But like every now and then there's a cutie and you have a little lap dance and you are literally rubbing all up and down them. Like, yeah, maybe people forget about what a lap dance really is. It's not a show. You are sitting on their lap, grinding on them. Like, that's pretty much all there is space for, really, in lap dance booths. And so, yeah, you're going to get a little frisky if you're attracted to them. And then maybe they'll ask you on a date, and then maybe you'll say yes, and then maybe you will date for a little bit. But yeah, I find it surprising that people are so shocked about that. But you go, Vixen, you tell the rest of your story.
Yeah, I've absolutely been horny in lap dances, and like you said, it's weird that people get shocked by that. And I also, there's that worry about saying it, because it feeds into that stereotype of like us doing it for male validation. But need I remind you, not all of our customers are men, and sometimes, and even if it is that, who fucking cares? Like, strippers are human beings. We have bodies. We have romantic attraction to people. We are human beings. We're at work. We're in stripper mode. But sometimes our real life comes out and we're like, oh shit, this person's hot. my body is aroused. I am into this, and we shouldn't be demonized for that. We shouldn't feel ashamed of that, and it shouldn't be like, yeah, ew, that's so gross. Like, I'm a fucking human being, and I'm also a sex witch. I honor my sexuality. I don't give a fuck. So, and sometimes the customers have been really ugly, but just the way they looked at me. I have such a praise worship kink. Like, if someone looks at me in a way that it's like, I know that they know that they're so lucky to be seeing me like this right now, that's so sexy to me. And so there's been ugly guys that have booked me where I'm like, yeah, that's right, fucking, yeah, you take this fucking tits in your face. And it turns me on because I'm a little bit of a dom like that sometimes. Like, yeah, that's right, fucking, yeah, sit on it. Like,
Honestly, like, I don't know. I think what's also funny is that we have to explain away all of the like stripper stereotypes and shit that come along with this. Like, some people are going to think that this job is so disgusting that how is there a chance that we could possibly be like even remotely like into any of the guys that come in. But then there's other people that are going to be thinking, oh, well, they're so easy, of course they're going to, fucking want to, fuck all the customers. And it's just like, we are just normal fucking people. We are just fucking human beings that when you see a hot person, you're like, oh, hot person, keen. Or you're like, oh no, not hot person, not keen. It's not just us being blanket disgusted or blanket wanting to fuck everyone. Do you know what I mean? It's like the same if you're a fucking, I don't know, work at Cotton On and you see a hot guy come in and you go, holy fuck, and then he like buys something off you and asks for your number and you go, yes, king, period, I'll give you my number. It's the same thing. Yes, there is a little bit of a blurred line because we're humping you a little bit. But like, we're just fucking people, and like, fuck, I was full-time 3 nights a week stripping for, yeah, like over 3 years, maybe 4. And I was probably like turned on by like 10 dudes. So it happened a lot, but it didn't happen a lot. So I just think people need to remember that strippers are just like fucking people. I don't even know how to explain this away any further. It's just like, of course I'm going to be like attracted to people at times. And of course at times you're going to act on it. I'm not saying that, obviously a lot of clubs have like quite a few rules around like what can and can't be done in the club. All of the clubs that I've worked at have been, you can touch boobies and bum, and strippers can kiss the customer on the cheek or something like that, but like that is essentially the limit to it. And of course, for the most part, I would say strippers probably respect those rules because it often is the difference between having a job and not having a job, because if you get found out doing that stuff, you will be fired, like on the spot. But these motherfuckers do be asking you on dates. And sometimes you go, that would be nice. Why not? Yeah.
no, like you said it, we are just human beings at the end of the day, working at a job. It's nightlife. It's an intimate space. Our bodies we are humans. We have bodies, and sometimes you're in a dance and you're like, I'm wet. Oh Lord. Okay, cool. And it can actually work to your advantage sometimes because the customers are so aroused by that, and then they give you more money because they're like, oh my God, she's like really into it. And it's like, yeah, fuck yeah. I don't know. It's just, we're humans. We're human beings at the end of the day. There's really no other way to put it. I was going to share the story of the time I fell in love with a customer, but I think we might save that for a future episode where we talk about dating as sex workers, because we're getting close to that. Well, we're definitely at the end of the episode, and I think we should wrap up. But oh wow, that was a really good cordial, and I am really enjoying that we are both starting to become a bit more unfiltered and unapologetic, and we hope that people listening to this are enjoying that too. And again, we are always down to hear your feedback. I know I just said, I don't give a fuck what people think about my ad, but I do. I am open to hearing your feedback.
It's just emotive. It's emotive, it's a moment of rage. And so that's why you're saying that. But there are certain times when we are like genuinely don't give a fuck about that. But like, we want to hear feedback on the podcast. We want to know what you guys think. We want to hear your questions, so fire them at us.
Well, you've been listening to Stripped and Unscripted with Vixen Temple and Madeline Rose. Thank you so much for listening. Aroha nui to you all, and we will see you in the next episode.